Hi, welcome to the Results Rules OK V-blog, podcast, recording, video, whatever we call it. My name is Dave Holland, and in keeping with the flow, what we attempt to do is bring interesting people onto the call and discuss about them, their background and their business. And today, my pleasure to welcome Mr. Jimmy Armitage to the call. Jimmy, hi, welcome.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure from Wavelength Recruitment. And our paths crossed actually in quite an interesting way, didn't they? In a very good way via LinkedIn. And it was really interesting. I did a little workshop. We were chatting offline, and it was about people being on the same wavelength as how you attract people, how you work with people best, this sort of thing. And I just wanted to tell the story about how you and I connected and our connection in common, Aaron at Treybridge. And I thought, let me just check on the details. And it hadn't sunk in with me that the name of your company is Wavelength Recruitment. And I thought, this is getting spookier and spookier, you know. It's very, very strange, but that's how we met. So welcome to the call, welcome to the conversation. So for anybody, I'm sure most people know of you. You are world famous, of course, doing what you do. But who's Jimmy Armitage? What's your background? What you're from? How did you get into recruitment?
Yeah, how long you got? Yes, my background, you'll probably be able to tell from my beautiful Mr. Potato Head style face with these cauliflower ears that I'm a bit of a fan of rugby, played rugby most of my life.
Yeah.
So I've always been involved in team sports and bits and pieces like that. And I was fortunate enough to do all right at it at a young age. And it gave me a little bit of a taste around elite teams and what you can achieve together.
Yeah.
And then I sort of put my big boy pants on and went out into the working world, mainly because I realised I wasn't going to be that good at rugby when it came down to it. I thought I'd get a real job. And went out into the world of sort of B2B. So I've done all sorts of bits and pieces, really. My main sort of career path started when I worked with some supermarkets, a small SME, so food to supermarkets, and worked my way up through that. And was then fortunate enough really to be involved in a startup that went from nothing to 30 million turnover in about 4 years.
Wow, nicely done.
And recruitment was a massive pain in the bottom. So as I'm sure anybody listening will probably relate to, trying to find human beings that match the abilities that you want, but also the sort of people that will fit with your team and share the sort of values is incredibly difficult. And when you try and do it on scale, which I know is something you know a thing or two about, it is incredibly difficult and a lot of things come into play. So long story short, we exited that business, and I said we, me and my business partner, Mr. Kim Farrell, and decided to do something about it. We personally felt recruitment wasn't good enough, and decided to do something, and that was 6 years ago. So that's how we got into recruitment. So from my side, any relevant things about me? I'm pretty boring, to be fair. I've got two kids.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you for a minute.
I've got 2 kids. I don't play rugby anymore because my body's giving up on me and I'm old, 35, which is old for rugby, despite this youthful complexion. Not. And so I basically get my kicks now with the rugby, from the rugby side of it, and focusing that into Wavelength. That's the sort of team ethic and trying to work out how to get the right people in people's businesses.
Fabulous, fabulous. And do you regret, and not regret, but do you sort of wish, and the reason I'm asking this question is because I wanted to be a rock drummer. That was my, I played rugby. I was always the one they threw in at the scrum, anyway, whatever. But I got hurt a lot. And I wanted to be a rock drummer. And I didn't go down, I remember I had an opportunity to go and play the drums, because I was reasonably good on the cruise ships, you know, go and travel the world on the cruise ships. And I turned it down, and I went and did an engineering apprenticeship instead, playing with rockets and guns for the military. And I always wonder, I never regret it, but I always wonder, what if I'd have gone, you know, turned left, not right? Do you ever think or wonder that you could have maybe made a career out of rugby, or not so much?
No, not really. I managed to do, basically, I think in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was playing the wrong position, but I'm quite stubborn. So I was like, I'm going to stick at it.
Yeah.
But if I'd changed position, maybe I could. I think I loved rugby, and I basically then went on to play sort of semi-pro, but with my friends. So my take on it is I've had the best of both. So I've had the taste of the stuff, so the England age group stuff,
Yeah.
And seeing that, and a bit of being fortunate enough to play with some people who've won the European Cup and stuff like that, which is great.
Very cool.
But then also having the element where you go, actually just going to go play with my mates. Oh, we're away in Cornwall this weekend. Well, maybe we should go for a few beers afterwards. So, yeah, not really. I'm not really a sort of person who looks for regrets, to be fair.
Sure.
Probably Andy, because I've failed a few times. So
It goes with the territory for all of us, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the reason for the question there, I was interviewing one of my other colleagues over in the UK, a gentleman called Jake Ogden, and he actually played rugby for England. And we're chatting to him as well. He's now a martial artist, one of the top, martial artists in the UK. And I remember saying to him, like, how did you get into rugby? How did you get to play for England? And he literally, I think two things happened to him. Was as a youngster, he said to his mum and dad, I want to play rugby for England. And his dad said, great, go for it. He didn't say, as my dad said to me, don't be an idiot, there's no money in playing your silly drums. We talked myself out of it to an extent. And he just said, well, he convinced himself, well, somebody's got to play for England. Somebody's got to do it. Why not me? And it's just an interesting take on it. But I think he came out with a few bumps and bruises as well, to be fair. It is a young man's sport. But never mind. But you're happy in your world now, though. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just in rugby's a sport that, although it might be slightly changing a little bit now with the money that's coming to it.
Yeah,
it's a sport that's it's quite values driven. So and it prides itself on that. So it doesn't really matter. Say you're at a wedding, right? And you play for, pick a team. I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah.
First place that comes into my head, Hartford. Don't know why. Hartford third team, right?
Yeah.
You play for Hartford third team, and in there is also a guy who's played for the British and Irish Lions, which is got top of goal.
Yeah.
If you both meet at the bar, you'll start chatting about rugby, and there'll be respect there. Not in the same as you, the same standard, but just as in you pull your boots on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that rugby's been incredibly good to me. I actually do work with people that I played rugby with 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's just that sort of thing that you know each other intimately. You spend time away, you room with each other, you're on couches and buses, and it teaches you a lot. So I've got nothing but sort of debt the other way, really, for rugby.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the rugby's different to football, isn't it? Nothing against football or footballers, but there does seem to be this sort of bond or respect or spirit in the rugby world that there maybe isn't quite so much in the football world.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I'm certainly no expert at football. Most of my best mates love football, and I don't really know anything. So, but yeah, I think it's probably because we're not lumps off each other in rugby, don't you? So you can't help but sort of have a bit of camaraderie when you're spending inflicting that much damage on each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, and you mentioned you sort of went into recruitment because you sort of recognized there were some gaps there. Back in the old days, we had a transport logistics transport company, and we tried to get drivers and picker packers and operatives to the warehouse, and we couldn't get them. So we created our own recruitment business to service that need, and then it spread from there. So that's my sort of experience of it. And what I found was that a lot of agencies, a very generic term, is, well, they're all pretty much the same, and they're all pretty much not very good, actually, or at least they were back in the day. And is that still the case? I mean, are agencies just the same, or are you all just churning through the same CVs, or have you created something a bit different and special in the sector?
Yeah, I think so. So we've clearly created something very different, born out of our frustration with that.
Yeah.
And I think there are, like any industry, there are a lot of cowboys in recruitment, and they tend to then be the stories that are told. So I think there are a lot of people who try their best to operate within a traditional framework. Mm-hmm. But our point really and our message is that framework doesn't work. So no matter how customer focused you are, no matter how hard you work, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And if I can quantify that by work, we started this business because we were the customer, we were the client, we were the frustrated.
Yeah.
So what do you want? What does recruitment work? What does it serve?
Yeah.
It serves, you want to recruit people who fit your team, mm-hmm. who are great at the job, and who stick around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And traditional CV-led recruitment doesn't do that. And if you look at the numbers, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But why doesn't it work? I'll get on the soapbox here. Do you want me to go into that?
No, I do. I'm intrigued, and I think people listening are going to be intrigued because there is this perception out there of not just recruitment agencies, that's probably unfair, but recruitment is, and I get doing what I get told all the time, you can't find good people. Well, you know, you need to know how to look, don't you? I guess that's the trick. So no, please, I'm intrigued. Yeah, how do you do? What's the secret sauce?
Yeah, well, there's lots of things. I mean, the number one reason why people look good on paper and don't work out in an organization is down to poor cultural fit, or called poor attitude. But they mean the same. When you read so there's two separate studies, and both of them have pitched it at 89%. The reason that people fail 89% of the time is down to what they call poor attitude or poor cultural fit. When you read their findings, they're the same thing.
Yes.
But what I find really fascinating about recruitment, because I'm a massive nerd, confession on a tale, but is that when you have these conversations with people, instinctively, as humans that go out in the world and know things, you know it. And when you get to highlight this stuff, people go, yeah, that makes complete sense. Yes. So why do you like some people and why don't you like others? And quite a lot of the time, it's those shared values. It's the unwritten rules, if you like, of how we're going to behave. Yeah. And they might have them around punctuality. You might have them around attention to detail. You might have them around empathy and caring. Yeah. And there are no right rules and wrong ones. It's just around mutual sharing of. Sure. So you don't find that on CVs. No. The whole recruitment industry works on send your CV in, and if we're really, daring, send a cover letter. Personal. Ooh. But you're not going to pick up any of that stuff. No. So there's a whole myriad of why we'll get it wrong. But effectively, the framework doesn't work. It's not fixing the number one reason people fail. And so as good a talented a recruiter as somebody may be, or the other thing is, you do it yourself. And more organizations are choosing to use technology, which is great. Yes. So that means it works in every industry. Sure. But the challenge is the innovation is not being put into making it easy for you as the employer. It's all centered around making it easy for you as the candidate to apply for a job. And so if you look at, I'm sure we all get them from LinkedIn, you could do this job. And it's like, well, I'll tell you now, I couldn't. So why are you asking me to apply for that? Yeah. But also the other major jobs boards that advertise on the internet, one-click applications. Yeah. You apply for this, do you want to apply for this? Well, if I'm the employer, I don't want somebody who's applied because it's easy for a one click of a button. I want them to apply because they know who we are and they want to work with us. So how do you do approach this? I mean, I assume social media has been a big, but from a research perspective, you can sort of get a feel for people on social media. But if you're looking for a candidate for one of your clients, I mean, the CV and the cover letter is the old traditional way of doing it. How do you find that? Is it literally a sort of a conversation over coffee? And is that how you do it? What are you doing with them? No. So the most common question we get asked when anyone finds out what we do is, so where do you find the candidates then? Yeah, there you go. As if we've got a hidden channel that nobody else in the world can get to. Yes. It's just a wavelength bat phone where we've got all these people. We actually don't register any candidates at all. Right. We have no databases. If you go to our website, you cannot apply. You cannot give us your CV to say I'm looking for work. Right. We only work with employers. Now, by proxy, what that means is that people who apply for the job work with the right team, they're fulfilled and they really enjoy it. But we decided we can't serve both parties. So what frustrated the hell out of us was when you were paying a recruiter and you're the employer, and they're then showing the candidates you really liked to other employers. Yes. And it's like, well, why are we paying you then? I'm a bit confused because I thought it was because you were going to get the right people, but you're showing the right people to everyone. Right. It's just a shop window approach if you're not careful. Yeah. So our approach is very much centered on the organization that we work with, so the employer. Yeah. And then it comes out of that. So what we actually do, the first step is, who do you need? Sounds really obvious. And it's probably the most overlooked process that most recruiters, anyone looking to employ someone does. Sure. Because we tend to do things like just hold on to a job title really quickly. So the easy one is, we need sales. Let's get a salesperson. Okay. But do you need a salesperson or do you need a marketer? Should you even recruit or should you outsource? So our process effectively at top line is first step, discovery. why are you wanting to hire someone? So what outcome are you looking to achieve by bringing this person into your business? And that question unearths all sorts of things.
Sure.
And quite often it is, oh, I didn't need that person.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
The second part,
a different person they initially thought as well, perhaps.
Yeah. And I've got an anecdote that happened the other week, but I'll probably highlight that if you want that. But
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why you're hiring them.
Yeah.
And the second sort of level to that question would be, so what does success look like in the next 12 months? And what that allows us to do is really flush out any unrealistic expectations.
Sure.
So if I stick with the salesperson analogy,
yeah,
we want what you're looking to achieve. Oh, we need to get sales into our business, and we're looking to double our sales. Okay, right. What would success look like in the next year? Doubling our sales. Okay, right. So the next question is, what activities do they need to do in order to achieve that? Well, then it might transpire that they're going to need to come up with a marketing message, come up with a strap line, come up with identifying who the key targets are. Before you know it, you're drafting out a sales director and a marketing director's roles.
Absolutely.
A salesperson with 30K, and you can just say, look, that's not happening. Yeah. Like that. So that's the first element, really, is getting to grips with, you're a business and you're trying to go somewhere. How is this person coming into your team going to help you get there? What is it you're looking to achieve? And so often that is not considered.
I guarantee it's not. I think from a recruitment perspective, looking in on the bulk of the industry, they don't ask those questions, I don't think.
Yeah, and the same internally. If you're looking to do the recruitment yourself, nobody's asking those questions, especially small organizations that don't have maybe an experienced HR director that's been around the block a few times and seen that go wrong. So as an example of where that can work really well, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, it's more than a few weeks ago now, actually, because they've just started working there. So where they wanted to deliver great customer service, and they're a very innovative business trying to change their industry. And they started the conversation saying, I think we need a customer service director. And so we went through those 3 steps just to start with. And what transpired was, actually, it's not dealing with the customer issues that are coming in a very professional manner and building those relationships. It's actually eliminating those issues as to why those issues are there in the first place. So it's a digital business. So why is it somebody's having to send a message, a live chat, a call to book a process that's supposed to be online? And what came from the entrepreneur that runs this business is, actually, I don't need that, do I? What I need is a agent of change, is an operational guru. But the actual tangible benefit was, we went from a 65K a year job to a 45K a year job. Just by going through that conversation, there's £20,000 worth of savings because we defined it. And a lot of it, we fortunately get to work with a lot of smart people. So it's not that we're more intelligent than them, we haven't seen it.
No.
Because with what you do, a lot of the time is giving people the space and a point in time where you're going to say, together, we're going to discuss this.
Absolutely.
I know you've got 1,000,001 things to go on, but you're on a meeting with me, you're not doing that.
That's it.
So what are we going to look at? So anyway, that's the first part. And then what we bring that into is what we call the wavelength way, which is the framework, which is, if you want to get somebody who fits your team, is great at the job and sticks around, you need to assess them in 4 areas. And depending on the role, they're more important than others. But those 4 areas are capability. So yes, we're not saying experience is completely unimportant, but it's not the be all and end all. So if you need it, you need it, right? So experience goes into that. And skills. So if you need somebody who can write code in a specific language, they need to be able to write code. That's cool. That goes into that. But it's also the other abilities. It might be relationship building. It might be creativity. What is it that you need them to possess in order to be great at this role, or potentially be great at this role? That goes in that box. Then we've got motivation. So some really good work by Angela Duckworth. I don't know if you can grit, that sort of thing. But if you can press that. So a lot of that, it really just goes to show you how important motivation is. I mean, it's, again, intuitively, you know it. Sticking at something and being prepared to keep going is going to yield results.
Absolutely.
But it's also around, why do you want to work here in this team? And how do you see this job fitting in with your life? Because you want to have a life, right? And But the people who are going to stick around are the people that go, I don't put my life on hold to come here. It's part of my life. And this is how I'm going to develop in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years here.
Yeah.
So it's about bringing that in.
Sure.
Then we've got physical environment fit. And that tends to be either an issue or it's not.
Right.
So ultimately, can this person work and perform in the conditions that you've got?
Yep.
Is your environment different to what they're used to? So we had one quite recently where we hired a HR professional to come in, and they were going to be dealing with a fair few grievances, mainly over email initially to support line managers. But the organisation that they were working in, especially when COVID ends, is a large open plan office with hot desking. So as a HR professional dealing with that, you're not going to have your own office, and you're not even going to have your own desk, and you're going to be sitting amongst other people. So that takes a certain type of person. So we needed to figure that out.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And make sure we drew that to their attention, and we went through that with them before we took the job on. And then lastly, but by no means leastly, is team fit.
Right.
So how do they fit in with your organisation? As we alluded to earlier on, this is the most significant reason people who look good on paper fit.
Yeah, I think the thing, people say they sort of hire on skills, but they fire on attitude is the old thing, but it's sort of basically, it fits around what you're saying. Because presumably, again, in your experience and in mine as well, I prefer to hire somebody with, you know, personality, attitude, background, and the grit and all this, that, and even if their skills are okay, I'll train them and teach them the specifics, if you like, as we go along. But I'd much prefer to have the attitude and personality right, and I'll teach them rather than the other way around, where it just doesn't fit and causes, you know, they become toxic to themselves and other people. But is that sort of philosophy that you follow as well?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think if you said that to people, I think you would find very few people who disagree. But then if you watch how they recruit, that's not how they behave.
It's bizarre.
And so,
yeah, it's bizarre. What we know intuitively works, people don't follow the system sometimes.
Yeah, and it is real specific, right? So let's, we don't live in this fictional world where it's, just hire for attitude. Well, listen, when I'm getting on the plane, I don't want the pilot to be a really great guy or great gal, but they don't know what they're doing.
A dodgy flyer. You don't want a dodgy flyer, do you? No.
Exactly. You're going in for knee surgery. You won't mind somebody having done one before, at least. So it depends on the role. If it's a more open role, it's lower paying, you traditionally might call it a junior role or whatever, then it's got more scope for that. But if you're bringing somebody in who must have the skill set and be able to do the things, and they're potentially quite complicated, then you can't just build that attitude. What we're saying is it's all four. So it is capability, it is motivation, it is ability to work in the environment, so environment fit, and it is team fit. But team fit is massive. Yeah. And you are much better served taking somebody who's got slightly lower skill level because they can learn. Yeah. You can't learn your values, or you can do anything, but it is incredibly difficult. And every psychologist I've spoken to will write off, because I'm really excited and I hang around with the sorts of people, that your values are pretty much fixed by age 8. Yes. Yeah. And it's incredibly difficult. It's very statistically unlikely that somebody will change their values. Yeah. And if you've got somebody who doesn't believe what you believe, in terms of, not in ideas and groupthink, but in terms of what is the right way to treat somebody and what isn't, you'll be forever disappointed and undisciplinary. Yes. Yeah, this sort of frustration kicks in, and then then recruiters really suck and this is horrible, and it just self-perpetuates. You're not very careful. So how do you find out? I mean, you understand what the employer is looking for, and then I assume you're raising visibility of the opportunity, and then what do you do with the candidates then? Are you having a conversation or a questionnaire? How do you approach that? So what we do is we go through that framework with the employer. Yeah. We understand, so we call it a job briefing process. We go through that. And then what we then do off the back of that is provide them with the job advert as styled based on what they've said. Yeah. Application questions that all candidates must answer to apply for the job. Yeah. And they are centered around those 4 areas. So they're always bespoke to the job and the employer. Yeah. And then our interviews we organise interviews for our partners, and we provide the interview questions.
Okay.
And rather than being, I mean, it might be quite an interesting exercise just to watch some of your clients squirm. If you say, so why do you have 2 interviews then?
Yeah.
And what's the difference?
Yeah, who's told you that? Exactly.
And what's the difference between interview 1 and interview 2? Because
Yeah.
in most people's cases, the difference is interview 1's like a more loose, friendly chat, is it? And then interview 2, we just bring more people into the room. I don't know what we do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what we've found is that it's about almost making them modular, like themes. So the first interview is around capability and environment.
Yeah.
So all the questions are going to center around capability and environment fit. And the people that need to attend that interview are those that want to assess capability.
Sure.
Now, as an aside, the benefit that can offer a lot of business owners is that you don't need to be the one that's in that first interview necessarily, because you know you're going to come in the second interview. The second interview is focused on team fit.
Yeah.
So that's what we call culture, values,
and
motivation. Yeah. So how it works in practice is we'd have that job briefing process. We'd provide a job advert, application questions, and then interview 1 and interview 2 questions, which are going to assess those 4 areas and reveal who's the right person to fit in your organization. After we go and search for candidates, which is a 2-week period. We found that's our sweet spot. We can get the best amount of applicants in. They come through, we shortlist them. So we go through, and that typically looks like we put forward our favourite 8, 5 that we suggest they interview, and 3 sort of not quite as good as those 5. And then most of the time, our partners will just interview the 5, but sometimes they'll swap them out. We had one recently where actually the 7th one got swapped into the 5th one, and they were the one that got the job. Okay. So there's still a little bit of preference within there.
Sure.
They then interview ideally 5 at that first capability interview.
Yeah.
Go through that. And the 3 best candidates, we encourage them to take through to the second interview. So if that scenario happens where you're the owner of the business, but you didn't do the first interview, you're now sitting in that 3rd interview. You've got 3 people, and all you're looking at is, I know all 3 can do the job.
Yeah.
What I'm now trying to understand is which of these 3 would best fit in here.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes what happens is there's still taking 2 because we found 2 really good ones and we couldn't decide, and actually we've got scope, so we're having 2.
Absolutely. Why not? Absolutely. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And so given that sort of process, and I remember we were looking for an operations manager for a pharmaceuticals company. This is in Birmingham back in the day. And our systems weren't as elegant as yours by any means, but I offered to sit in with the client on the interview because there were certain questions that I wanted them to ask, and there were some that I didn't want them to ask. The things like what's your weaknesses and 5-year plan, all this, whatever. There's some things I didn't want to ask. And I was sat there with this guy uninterviewed, me and my client, and my client said he's very nervous, bless him. And he said to the candidate, he said, "What's your number 1 weakness?" And I thought, oh, here we go. And so the guy sat there and he thought about it, and he looked up and he went, "Blondes." And I thought that was such a brilliant answer, because we couldn't do anything with it. What are you going to say to that, But it was just, these are the war stories. But I think what you're doing, you're refining out the skills, the ability, and then, as you say, it's that fit and values that go with it as well. So it is an interesting way. And what do you have any? What are your stats? What are your ratios? That sort of thing. From what's your hit rate, if you like? I assume you're ahead of the curve in that with the way you're doing it. What sort of numbers do you expect to achieve?
So, well, COVID has put a massive hole in our how long are people sticking in the job?
Yes,
what does furlough count as? So that's the discussion there. But in terms of placement, so we offer an 8-week guarantee that if the person we put in leaves for any reason, either party not happy, we'll just run it again.
Right.
So that happens very rarely. So we know that when they're there, we have a follow-up call on a year to make sure they're still there. So anecdotally, that's far from research, as I say, COVID's put a hole in that.
Yeah, no, sure.
We placed 15 people with a partner over the last 4 years, and when we did our research, 14 of them are still there. So
wow, okay,
that's only one partner, so that's far from exhaustive. I wouldn't expect anyone to sort of put stock in that from our point of view. We're not claiming that's research.
No, sure, but it's an
in terms of our placement rates, we place 3 to 3.5 times more than the recruitment industry average. So in numbers, that is, the average recruitment agency only places 25% of the roles they take on. And that's from a report by the REC, from the government body. It's a conservative estimate, 75 to 85.
Wow.
It's actually higher than that, but you'd rather under promise and over deliver.
Yeah, well, a little bit of system is good. No, but it gives that indication of that quality, because I think the recruitment sector, as you say, as all sectors are, and I include coaching and training, consulting, all sorts in this, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly in the sector. And it is that key differentiation. But when you do something well with passion, like you guys clearly do, it makes a big difference. It's not just a marginal difference; it's 3 times the difference, isn't it? And that is what makes it so successful.
One of the big reasons for that, and this is something that any recruiter can take on, please do, is every job that we take on, or before we take on, we research.
Right.
Like, to make sure it's the right fit, because it makes no sense. There's lots of things in recruitment, and one of the reasons we want to change this is there's things that happen that don't benefit anyone.
Sure.
And they happen in other industries as well, but it's just really annoying. It's like, why are we doing this? It doesn't work. Like, nobody benefits. So if a recruiter takes on a job they cannot do, nobody benefits, and you've all wasted your time.
Exactly, it's pointless.
But 75% of the time, that's what happens.
Yes. It must be by definition. Those numbers wouldn't be as they are. But I think some of the, without sort of going off a tangent, I think a lot of the recruitment companies, agencies, are so numbers and bonus and commission driven and KPI numbers, and they've got to sort of tick the box for phone calls and CVs, and they just go through the motions. And if they do enough stuff, something will fall out the bottom of it. But there's a very inelegant system, and it's irritating for clients and equally irritating for candidates as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of recruiters, not all of them by any stretch of the some probably fantastic ones out there, and particularly the headhunters, which we don't do specifically, that they're really great. But a lot of them are completely unaware of what it is like when you're in a business and you need it. And some of them might be lifers in recruitment, so they've never worked out of it. They don't understand it.
That's a good point.
I saw one the other day. I screenshotted it, but I haven't done anything with it. I probably just need to delete it. But it's just blew my mind. They openly shared on LinkedIn that they got a trophy from their big recruitment organization because they'd been the top biller for that quarter. And I'm like, not the best service, not had people that they've placed people in the longest time. Right. You're telling LinkedIn, all of us watching, that you're getting praised because you've screwed us out of the most money.
Exactly. Yeah. Where's the value, quality, service? And indeed. Yeah, absolutely. It defines it. And I think that this is why I think that, and recruiters aren't alone in this, but the recruitment has an unfortunate reputation because the barriers to entry are low. Anybody can jump into it, laptop and a phone, you're away, as it is in my sector as well. So we do the same sort of thing. But also I think that it does, in my view of these type of sectors, is that when you do it well and you add a bit of passion, and it absolutely stands out from the crowd and it makes a huge difference. So sometimes being in a saturated sector, it can be good. They make you look good, don't they, sometimes as well, so it helps a little bit.
It's our biggest source of new clients. These people who've been burnt by other recruiters. So
yeah, so keep it up. Keep burning the bridges, guys, and it helps.
There's just some things that are crazy. Contacting people you've placed with a company and trying to move them to another company, even though that company paid you a load of money to put them in there. That is a practice.
Would
any other industry do that?
Exactly. No, we wouldn't get away with it. You get shot. No, you can't do it. So looking at you, I understand. I think for people listening as well, there is that clear difference of approach. But you must come across a lot of people in business, entrepreneurs and owners. Just in your experience, what's the top 3 things that people get wrong when they're trying to recruit somebody for their company, whether they use an agency or not? But the number one thing is they don't come to you guys, I guess. But what are the 3 things they normally get wrong and make a mess of?
That's a really good question, because there are lots. So it's just around there are. So effectively, what You see, with our approach, we make sure that candidates fit those 4 areas against their business, and then we deliver a proven process to avoid all the pitfalls that you're going to. So there are lots. So it's just around trying to think about the people watching this, which are going to be the most common or at least the least technical to fix. So one straight away that happens consistently, but it happens on every project in every industry. It's age-old. You'll see it day in, day out. Is you don't spend the rigor at the beginning of the project. You just rush into it, and you get to the end, it doesn't work. Now, what that actually means in this context is the most common reason, or one of the most common reasons recruitment fails, is all of the key decision makers, or you might call them key stakeholders, or whatever, all of the people who want to have a say on what success in this job looks like are not involved at the beginning before you write the job advert. And that could be as common as the person who's actually managing this person hasn't been consulted. And so when they appear at second interview, having gone through all of this process, they don't like any candidates, because none of the candidates possess the one thing that they absolutely must have that they were never consulted. So that's the first one. All you need to do to fix that is just have a meeting. Just have a meeting before you go anywhere and put that forward and talk it through. I would say the second, again, it's really hard.
Of course.
But the second one is, what is a job title? The whole recruitment industry works on a job title, right? LinkedIn works on a job title. Put your job title there.
Absolutely.
Okay. What is the requirement? What is the agreement we've all got on what job title you should use for something? The answer is there isn't one. So what does a business development manager do? Are they a salesperson? Are they account manager? Are they customer service? If they're a salesperson, are they inbound, outbound? Do they go out to meetings? Do they just telesales? And you can do this with everything. What does a coach do?
Exactly. That's a very, very good question. I wonder myself sometimes. But absolutely, it's broad. It's broad, isn't it? It had to be much more specific. Quite right.
So when you set a criteria off, they must have pull a years out of the air. 3 years experience. Why? No one knows. Okay. Must have 3 years experience as a BDM. Must have 3 years experience as an operations manager. Okay, what does an operations manager do? Well, they must be pretty good. It's basically just going, we haven't really thought around what you're going to be successful in this role with. So we'll just reach out. So the second area people really get it wrong is leaning on job titles, which are meaningless. They don't mean anything, and there are no standardized things. We worked with, I won't name them because I'll probably get sued.
No, so I can bleep it out. You're okay. No, you're fine. Just
one of the largest private employers on the planet.
Okay.
They turn over in excess of £14 billion.
Oh.
And when we worked with their recruitment team, they're one of the reasons we no longer work with massive organisations.
Right.
Because we can't affect the change across them. There's too much bureaucracy.
when we worked with them, they couldn't hire nurses. Couldn't hire nurses for love and money. Just couldn't get them. Again, the thing that you alluded to earlier on, there aren't any good nurses. No. Yeah. When you looked at the package, they actually offered very good money.
Yeah.
They had shifts that suited people. There was a demographic of those nurses that wanted to work. And what was the mistake they made? The mistake they made that internally in this massive organisation, they started referring to the nurses, should I say, as healthcare professionals, which is fine. And then they abbreviated it to HCPs. Great. And then on every single job advert that they sent out, they were communicating to a bunch of people who didn't identify as HCPs. One of the fundamental things we went in is we changed it to nurses, and lo and behold, as well as other things we did, started to get hundreds of nurses applying for the jobs because they went, I am a nurse.
Exactly.
I like that.
I'm not an HEP, whatever that means, but I'm a nurse. Exactly right. Yeah, quite right.
And so that would be the second one.
Yeah.
So that's pretty straightforward. What would be the third one? I think the easy one. Well, it's not easy, but it is the most impactful. As we talked about values. So we know that the number one reason, if you are going to do it the old school way,
yeah,
I'll cry about it, but you're going to do what you're going to do out there.
Sure.
If you are going to rely on CVs, which is pretty much what if you're doing it yourself, all of the sites and providers are going to that's the route they're giving you.
Yeah.
You know that the number one reason somebody's going to fill in that job, if they've got past the basic parameters, is they do not share the outlook of you and your team and your organization in terms of values and culture.
Right. Okay.
So what you need to do is just put down the top 3, top 4 non-negotiable behaviors. So when we say value, they can be wishy-washy. People can say things like honesty, right?
Yeah, sure.
Much like a job title.
Yeah.
If we were to define honesty with 10 of us, we get 10 different definitions.
Sure.
So what I would say is the key thing there is take 3 or 4 non-negotiables.
Yeah.
What do you as an organization hang your hat on? It doesn't just need to be externally, it can be internally as well.
Yeah.
So I had a really good conversation with a business. I've lost the days. Yeah, it was earlier this week.
Yes.
And they're a really small team and they work really flexibly. I can't even speak today. Flexibility is key for them.
Yeah.
But they made the point, the only way as a small team that we can be flexible and we can work around our commitments, our kids, and other bits and pieces that we have, is that we need to be exceptional communicators between each other.
Right.
So that you can pick up and drop work off together. You know, we work as a team on it. But if you want to go to see your kids play when they're back on, you can, because I can pick up the baton because we've communicated.
Sure.
That's non-negotiable for them. That's how their whole organisation culture hinges on. So that would be one of them, as an example. But if it is, you're so customer-centric, it's all about solving the customer's problems, then that's got to be there. Once you've got those, they've got to be embedded in your application process and how you interview. Tell us about how you've done that before. Show us where you've led that. So to recap, that is get the right people involved from the start. That is making sure that you have the values and cultures involved. And I can't even remember, what was the third one?
They're linked. They're all linked. It's just
basically and beware of job titles.
And job titles, absolutely. But I think this is there is this sort of little cliche patterns that people think they should do in recruitment that they've inherited, you know, like first, second, third interview. And as you say, well, why? It's okay having 2, 3 interviews, but what's the difference? What's the purpose? And that's where I think a lot of people come down. And so if I'm a candidate, and there's a lot of people out there now, given COVID, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people moving around, that sort of thing, and I'm out there, I've got experience and knowledge, I'm a good person, I've got my CV, and I want to get a job. When I'm approached by an agency, I see an advertisement, what should I do? What do you expect to see from a good candidate? What behaviors would attract you to a candidate?
What you're trying to do, there's a sea of noise. I mean, it's interesting what you hear on the news versus what you see firsthand. There are more people out there to work in your jobs than you can shake a stick at. But the problem then becomes, how do you differentiate?
Yeah.
And so the question then becomes, if you're the candidate looking for a job, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, just bear in mind that employer wants somebody who's going to fit the team, be great at the job and stick around.
Yeah. So
how are you going to demonstrate that? First of all, don't apply for jobs that you can't be great at. Yes. Right? The temptation is to, but the number one bit of advice I would give is go somewhere where you share your values.
Yeah.
Right. Flip that thing back on its head, right? So if you're an employer, the number one reason these people aren't going to work out is they don't share your values, right? Well, flip it on your head. The number one people leave jobs is because it sucks to work there.
Absolutely.
Why does it suck to work there? It's not because loads of people are evil.
No.
It's because you're going somewhere that you don't share the same values, right? So if you're incredibly creative, and it's not bad or good, it's fit. So if you're somebody who's incredibly creative and you really enjoy looking at problems and you like figuring out how to solve different problems, but you're going into an organization that expects you to work within a framework that's already proven, that wants you to be efficient in that and not necessarily give so much feedback, it will drive you crazy.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Don't let financial needs drive you into that. So that my number one thing would be, understand what the culture is there and demonstrate in whatever medium you can why that's the fit for you.
Yes.
Because when they're sitting opposite someone like you or I, you're going to go, do you know what? You would fit in here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And actually, the worst case scenario is we haven't got a job for you right now, but can I keep you on file? Because actually, it does sound like you'd be a brilliant asset to the team.
Sure. Sure.
So hopefully that was a decent answer.
Absolutely, it's really good. It's great. It's good. It's always interesting to see what, because this the old assumed ways, and I see people and they say you see it on LinkedIn that they've applied for 784 jobs. It's like, crikey, you must be applying for a pretty broad range of jobs then. If you haven't, okay, I keep applying, but my goodness, they get it wrong somewhere, I guess, as they go along. This thing about values, it's interesting. Just a bit of feedback, but out of interest, you and I, we're in a similar network. We have similar contacts and connections. We spoke a couple of weeks ago and we're on literally same sort of wavelength, and doing these recordings, sometimes it doesn't matter who they are. I know, having done the conversation with people, when I set the conversation up, they're not going to show up, or I have to chase them, or I have to prod them and say, remember to be here, remember to be there. And they show up 10 minutes late and I'm sorry, I'm late. I had the kids and the coffee, the dog and the cat and this sort of thing. And I knew that I didn't have to do that for you and I, for what we're doing. So I opened the call at 5, I believe it was like 5:02, and at 3 minutes to, you're there, bang, away we go. And it's that sort of wavelength, that's, I think, the fit. Because if people do that, one of my values is time and being on time and schedule and that sort of thing. And clearly it's one of yours. So hence we have, compelling conversations together. But if it's not, if it wasn't, then we wouldn't be sat here. But it goes with employment and people in teams as well, doesn't it? If you want to
That's exactly it, yeah.
Yeah. If you want to see examples of people with different values around time, come to Luxembourg, because we're on Luxembourg time sometimes, and not everybody, but it's flexible, put it that way, which sends me up the wall. But anyway, it's just a personal thing still. Anyway, yeah. So fabulous, Jimmy, thank you. Fabulous, engaging conversation. I've learned lots about recruitment anyway, so thank you. People listening to this who are thinking they need to obviously connect with you, or maybe see if you can help them out. How can what's the best way of contacting Jimmy Armitage at Wavelength Recruitment?
A couple of ways, really. You can go to our website, which is yourwavelength.co.uk.
Okay.
And you can just hit a message on the contact us page, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm normally getting involved in some conversations on there, doing some things. So it's just Jimmy Armitage at LinkedIn, and I use this space where you can identify me.
There you go.
So very handy like that. Yeah, and probably be found commenting on your posts at the same time. So
if they find you, they're going to find me, and vice versa. So if they want to find you, look for me, and want to find the other way around as well. So no, it's really good. It's great stuff. Well, look, fabulous. Thank you for your time. Interesting, compelling as always. I'm sure we're going to be speaking as we go along anyway. For now, for people listening, watching, at least reach out to Jimmy and say hello, say thank you, and connect on LinkedIn, because doing these things takes a lot of time out of people's days. Appreciate your time, great value. I'll be back in probably a week or two's time with another one. Watch our page for events. I think Jimmy, I think you're coming on our events next week. I think you've registered.
Yeah, booked on.
Fantastic. So I'll see you then. Everybody else, I'll see you around. Thanks for watching. And for now, have a great weekend and have a lovely break. See you soon.
Thank you for having me.